Jesus finally had me where he needed me. He had to completely take me to somewhere where I had no access to any distraction but me and him. And that's what it took. It was the last straw where he would, because I would beg him and I was like, Jesus, take this. Like, I don't know how to do this. Please take this.
If you feel like letting go, you can take control.
Grew up in a town outside of Sacramento, born in Sacramento. Grew up in Folsom, California. Um, like the Johnny Cash song, Folsom Prison, right there. I grew up in a good home, bro. I had two loving parents, middle class, blue collar dad, construction, owned his own, framing company. I grew up good, bro. I was loved, I was always just in sports. I was very athletic and I had a blessed upbringing, bro. I did. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor, and I had everything I needed, including love and never neglected. I had a really good father, bro, and a really good mother as well. But that my dad had a good influence on me. But at some point in time, in my early teens, I decided to make my own decisions. Right, had a little bit of a lack of emotional control, uh, and I did sports. I excelled a lot. I excelled in pretty much everything I did. That my dad got me involved in. It was baseball and then it was wrestling and motocross and football and I really excelled in wrestling. It
Hell
came to
yeah, I'm a
me.
wrestler. I'm a
Yeah,
wrestler too, bro. I
it
grew up
came to me
wrestling.
the first year, bro. I was going to championships and getting medals, and it just came to me easy, bro. And I was a real physical kid. I was a contact sport kind of kid, and I grew up, with rough older cousins and like big brothers, and so we were physical, and it came in handy, but it also didn't in a lot of ways. But at some point, I started smoking weed. Started to decide that I no longer wanted to play sports because as I got a little bit older, it started to take more effort to be great at that sport, right? Other kids started really dedicating themselves to that. For me, it came so easy when I was young. I really didn't have to try that hard to be one of the best. I wasn't the best, but I was one of the best. And by the time, teenage years came around, I realized like it started to take more commitment, right? It started to take
Mhm.
more effort to keep growing in those sports and things. And man, I just didn't want any part of it, to be honest. I remember it switched for me. I was wrestling and I used to wrestle this kid and man, I kicked his butt for a lot of years, bro. Like no problem. And then all of a sudden that kid, he went to Austria and really committed himself with his dad and became really good. And then he came back to America and we wrestled, bro, and he beat me. And I got super butt hurt, bro. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I quit. I was
Yeah.
just I was immature and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. He had the heart, and that kind of was the beginning for me of I didn't really want to play sports anymore. And I was a skateboarder too, right? But my pops hated skateboarding, bro. Hated it. My dad was like, "You're not gonna be that dude that hangs out. You're gonna be involved in sports, and you're gonna be the regular guy. And which he wasn't. My dad he was a biker and a wild man in his day. So he pushed that super hard on
Yeah.
me. My dad got sober when I was 9 months old. Thank God. He found Jesus, and I'm so blessed for that. But as the teenage years went by, I didn't want to listen, bro. I started skating, hanging with that crowd, smoking weed, and pretty soon it was on and running, bro. And I realized like I was as a teenager, I was like, you can't tell me what to do, like and what that turned into is them being like, well, if you ain't gonna listen to us, you can't live at our house. So I was 16 years old and my dad's like, just beat it, dude. Like, I can't handle you, you gotta go. And I was like, all right, and so I kind of bounced out and would just stay at my girlfriend's house and just be all over, just cruising around with no aim. Started failing out of school, didn't even go to school half the time. Pretty soon that turned into heavier drugs. started messing around with cocaine, and that led to pills, and I went to rehab once. Man, I've been so many times of this, it's hard to recollect the whole story, but I ended up getting on pills my whole life because they would give me those things because I had a lot of injuries from all my sports, right? From a young age, I broke my arm 5 times, all kinds of stuff, broken bones. So Vicodins were just in the cabinet. And this was before the opiate epidemic. So parents didn't control where those drugs were at. You know, they were up in the cupboard. I just wanted them. I'd just grab them, you know, sell them to my little friends or whatever. But those opiates, man, they, over years and years, they started to affect me, and I ended up getting hooked on Oxycontin 80s. They were like the little green 80s, and it was a
Yeah,
huge thing. It was a
I
huge
remember
thing,
those,
bro.
man.
Yeah, we were smoking them off
Smoking them.
foil, and
Yep.
it was bad, bro. Off and on for a few years with those, and then I went to rehab, got out, fell back into it. My parents were just, they were burnt, man. They, you know, they did everything they could. I wasn't ready, you know, and so eventually they stopped. That the epidemic for the 80s was so big because all the homies were robbing pharmacies and robbing the trucks with the 80s on them. It was just a huge thing, if anyone remembers that. And they ended up changing the chemical makeup of those pills so you could no longer smoke them, you couldn't snort them. They turned them into like these gel things, so you couldn't really, the only way you could do them is just swallow them. And all that did for me and my friends, we just turned to black tar heroin, you know.
Hmm.
They stopped making the 80s, and we were like, okay, well, what's stronger than that, you know? And before you know it, uh, I'm 19 years old and shooting heroin, and that was a battle, bro. That's, you know, I forgot to mention, you know, my parents were Christians. I was raised in a Christian household, but I fell away from that, right? I uh, I wanted to live my own way, right? I had those beliefs instilled in me. I had those values instilled in me as a child, which I'm very thankful for. But when you live that life and you change your beliefs based on the way you're living, it's hard to see, you know. It's hard to see
Hmm.
until you get broken. Um, so I battled addiction with heroin for a lot of years, and when I was about 21, I moved up to Lake Tahoe. I was a snowboarder, right? I was heavy into board sports, skateboarding, snowboarding. It became like my life. I loved it. You know, I just wanted to hang out. I wanted to chill with the homies, smoke blunts, and just kick it and snowboard. And I ended up moving to Tahoe after I got out of rehab the last time. Um, and I was cool for a long time. I was like,
August 22nd, we're going to be doing a family outreach event. Men, women, children, everybody's invited. Invite everybody you know. I want to tell you this, my wife and I will be sharing our testimony. A few other people will be sharing their testimonies. The entire reason for having this event is to gather people together and lead them to Christ. Maybe you've even fallen away from Christ and you need to come back. This is for you too, man. We're going to pray for you. Anybody who's fallen away from Christ and you know you need to get back on track, your Heavenly Father is waiting for you with arms wide open like this, ready to embrace you like the prodigal son. He wants you to come back home. But it's going to be a powerful day. We're going to be baptizing people in the water right after they give their life to Christ, if that's what they want to do. And through the power of our testimonies, we're going to be showing people that Christ can change your life and make you a new creation. Our testimonies are the most powerful thing we have to lead someone else to Christ. And that's what we're going to be doing on that day, right? Doesn't matter where you're at, what kind of depression you're going through, what type of addiction you're facing, how bad you wrecked your marriage, how bad you've broken relationships all around you, how down and out you are. God took me from being homeless. He took me from being in and out of prisons, men's homes, juvenile facilities, and he changed my entire life because I made one decision. I decided to surrender, right? So the whole point of this event, we're going to be bringing people together and we're going to help them surrender to Christ, give their life to Christ. It's going to be a really powerful day. And I also want to tell you guys this, man. If you want to come alongside us and help fund this event, we have an active campaign going right now where you can make donations. If you want to partner with us in this mission in leading families to Christ, I'm going to leave the link down below. Click the link. If God puts it on your heart to donate something, please do. Even if he doesn't put it on your heart to donate something, pray over this event. Invite everybody you know. And you guys stay blessed.
I was cool off the heroin for a little while. I ended up getting a job as a park crew guy. So I built snowboard parks up in Lake Tahoe. That was like my job, is we just snowboarded all day and put in rails, built jumps. Like, it was the life. It was the dream for me, It was like I didn't get paid nothing, but I got paid minimum wage to kick it with my homies all day.
And
And
snowboard.
yeah, pretty much. It was rad, dude. I really enjoyed those years of my life, but I was wasting them for sure because I was always drunk. I was always high. I might have been off the heroin for a while, but so how it worked in Tahoe is like all the snowboard bums during the winter would work up there. They would live up there during the winter, but then summertime came around and everybody would disperse to the pot farms all over Northern California, right? Everybody would hit Trim Camp, or they'd go to Mendo, they'd go to Humboldt, they'd go to Butte County, wherever there was a weed farm who needed work, and you'd go the summer and get yourself a job on a pot farm. And man, I fell in love with that, bro. That was like, I idolized it. I remember the first time getting invited to go into that world with the pot farmers, and I like got up there and then we were just like drinking beer all day, learning how to grow plants, riding dirt bikes, shooting guns, just going crazy. You know what I mean? Like, there was the freedom. I was in love with that freedom that I thought, because it was just like the Wild West. It was like grow pounds and do whatever you wanted, and that was like I idolized that life. And so I ended up working hard for this dude, and he invited me back the next season. He's like, dude, I want you to come be my full-time worker on this farm with me, and I'll give you a percentage at the end of the year. And I was like, this is a dream come true for a 21-year-old kid. I'm like, broke snowboarder kid, and this guy just offered me a job, and I could have made a lot of money at the end of that year, but what had happened is my first year on that farm, we worked super hard all year long. And then it came time for harvest, and we got raided, dude. We got raided by, it was called Bintiff. It was in Butte County up near Orville and Chico, California. And it was called Butte County, or I forget the name of it, the Narcotics Task Force. And we got raided, bro. And they took me to jail, and they tore down our garden, and they OR'd me after like 8 days. And I was distraught, bro. Like me and the partner were we were bummed out. We had worked so hard, and then I got OR'd out of jail, and I was so sad that they destroyed our plans for the year. They got our plants. We had charges. We all got cultivation charges and state charges. It's pretty much nothing in California. So I thought. That led me into another heroin addiction. I was depressed. I was sad. I was broken because we lost everything we worked for. We were going to court like twice a month forever. So every time I had to go to court, I moved back to Tahoe. I was just doing the snow bum thing. And then we moved back and forth for court. And it was exhausting, bro, because it was just like, what are these guys going to do with us? I was just young, and I hadn't been through that yet. And they ended up dropping it. They ended up dropping it off me. They put it on my partner, took it, and they just gave him like 90 days house arrest, and nothing really came from that. I think he got a cultivation charge, but they dropped it down. It was nothing. It was nothing. We only had like 55 plants that grow, but they were just monsters, So we were all thought we were doing big things back then, but Jesus, he was always in my head, bro. It was crazy. Like he was always there, but I was running away every time. All those times he was just with his hands out, like, dude, like, what are you doing, bro? My life was so chaotic, but I just kept like running, like, nope, I'm gonna do it different this time. I'm gonna try it this way. I'm gonna try this solution over here, and nothing ever panned out like I thought it was going to. You know, I never got that big paycheck. I never got 400 pounds. It never worked out, bro. It never worked out. I
Scarface.
was always scraping by. Half the
Yeah.
time I'm on dope, you know, just being a bum and like selling pounds, like just to get by, you know, flipping stuff here and here, just nonsense, you know. And um eventually I decided to get clean again. This was in like, I forget, I think so. I got in 2014. So 2016, I had a moment of clarity. At that point, I had been on like like one of my gnarliest tangents for sure. I was hooked super hard on Xanax bars and doing black tar, and I was running from like county to county up to Oregon, like with people that I shouldn't have been, robbing people for weed. Like there was months in my life where I don't even know what happened. You know, I had insurance companies calling my phone like, "Oh, you were in Santa Cruz and you crashed your car into this person and we need to get money from you." And I was like, "I wasn't even in Santa Cruz. What are you talking about? I don't even remember that." You know what I mean? And it's pretty scary, bro. I'm like, think about it now. I'm like, there was a lot that I have no idea what I did or could have done, you know? And I was blessed by a God that I made it through. All of the countless times, bro, just I can just count so many instances where it was just like, yep, I know that that was God. You know, I used to say like, I don't know how I made it. I don't know how I made it. No, no, I know how I made it, and it was because Jesus had a bigger purpose in my life, and now I can see that.
Amen.
Um, Dude, it's just so clear, you know, it's so clear. And I ran from him for so long. He never left. Bro. He's just sitting there with his hands out, like, Mikey, come on, homie. Like, are you done yet? Are you done, dude? And you know, like, by no means was I like the gnarliest dude out there. I'm not some tough guy, violent, gnarly dude. You know, I was just on drugs and I was just crazy and I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, you know, and I was gnarly on levels of like everything just had to get taken to the limit. You know what I mean? Like the pain had to be taken to the limit. Everything. It's like, you know, there's those kinds of people who get one DUI and then they're like, oh my gosh, and they change their life and they're sober for the rest of their lives. And then there's dudes like me that get like 15 DUIs and I crash my car into a building and burn the whole building down, and I possibly burned some other neighborhood down, or you know, that's kind of my story. It takes a little bit more for me to learn for some important reason. Um, but after I decided to quit, I had just been broken, man. Like a couple of my friends passed away, and this is right before fentanyl came out. Right before fentanyl started coming out, God took me out. You know, I was like, I talked to him, and this was really before I gave my life to him, but I knew he was real. And I knew he was there because I was raised in it and I saw who Jesus was through people enough times in my life to know that it was real. I just was running from it, right? I was running from that truth because I was selfish. I was living a way that caused so much shame in my heart that the only way at that time for me to lose that shame was just to keep acting up, just to keep staying in that cycle, right? I didn't realize what forgiveness was. I didn't realize what salvation could be. And it really took a toll on me, bro. Mentally, my family had just been through the ringer. They pretty much just wrote me off. You know, I would come through town and stop at their house, and I was just a mess, bro. And now that I think about it, like my poor dad, bro. Like as much as I love my little boy now, bro, like how my dad would have to look at his little boy, bro. Like it messes me up. You know, it hurts, you know. And I pray that I can break this cycle so that my little boy doesn't. But I trust Jesus now, you know. I trust Jesus that whatever does come, even if it's hard, even if it's gnarly, I trust that I love him, and his promise to me for loving him is that all things are for our good, right? So
Amen.
even when that worldly situation seems like it's the most painful, traumatic experience ever, if you truly love God, I promise you that it's going to turn out for the better for you, you know? And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, you know, especially because we all go through things. But
Amen.
I remember an instance of when I decided I had the last straw, right? I'm done doing heroin. I didn't say I'm gonna get sober forever. I was like, God, I just don't want to do heroin and Xanax anymore. Like this, I can't do this. Like I was a monster, bro. Like that stuff turned me into just some, a demon, really. I had a demon in me.
Amen.
And that spirit it was nasty, bro. It gives me chills to this day. And it's been about 10 years, bro, since then. And I went back to Tahoe, and my cousin had his girlfriend, and she was going to Hawaii for a month. And she had this little studio over in Kings Beach, California. It's on the shore in North Lake Tahoe. And she's like, Mikey, like, just stay at my apartment and don't leave for a month, bro. Like, just take care of yourself, please. You can stay. Here's my key. Like, just take yourself. And that was like an angel, bro. Like, she was like an angel for that, because I was like, all right, she's giving me a chance, right? I have nowhere to go. She's giving me somewhere to stay. No one's sending me to rehab anymore. Everyone is giving up on me at this point. I was like, I gotta do this. I just have to get clean, you know? And so cold turkey, bro. I was praying for the first time in my life. I truly was praying to Jesus, like, bro, can you just help me? Like, I need your help to get through this. I want this more than to breathe air. I just want to stop this madness. Like, I need this evil to go away. And I remember that like first week in that little studio, just kicking, bro, just withdrawing. Just it was terrible, bro. It was nasty, and it was all that evil was like getting sucked out of me, But I didn't want to do it so bad that I was willing to go through that, and I ended up doing it that whole month. I got clean, and with God's help, I was praying to him. I hadn't like given my life to him or anything by then, but I just knew that I needed his help. And I reached out, and he helped me, and he gave me the strength to do that. And it was it was traumatic, man. Like that first month of getting sober off of Xanax and heroin, and like finally coming to like it takes about 30 days, right? It takes about 30 days before you really start to like feel like a normal human being again once you're going that hard.
Hmm.
And once that month was over, it was like, thank you, God. Like, you did it. But like, it was so brief though, because I hadn't given him my life yet. I just wanted help, right? I didn't get completely broken yet, but it was a seed there. And so we got clean, and I'm up in Tahoe after that, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, should I go back to the pot farms? And yeah, that's what I did, right? I found a new job on a pot farm, went up there, I worked there for like a month. I ended up getting drunk, beating up the dude who owned the farm. So I had to leave the mountain, and they sent me back to Tahoe. He's like, you can't be on my farm, dude. Like, like we just got in a fight. I forget, I was drunk or something. And he called me a name, just nonsense. But I ended up going back to Tahoe after that, managed to stay clean. And I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was like, man, like, I guess I'm just gonna like chill in Tahoe and be a snowboard bum forever. And at this point, it's 2016, beginning of 2000, summer of 2016. Um, And I forgot to mention I have a pretty big art background, right? I grew up
Mhm.
drawing and painting, and I was heavily involved like in graffiti art. That was a big part of my journey as well. That was just some of the shenanigans I did while I was doing all this nonsense, right? Just more chaos. But I had an opportunity come my way where my friend in Tahoe, her name was Emily, and she was like a sister to me. And she's like, Mikey, the local tattoo shop posted a thing on Facebook and they need someone as a shop guy. And I was like, heck no, like, I don't want to go pour out trash cans. Like, I'm good, you know? She's like, dude, like, just go in there and talk to them, you know? I was like, all right, whatever. I mean, I'll just go in there for you. Anyways, I went in there and they hired me, and I pushed it right from the beginning. I was like, I had done some scratcher tattoos, is what you call them, like homemade tattoos before that, but I never like committed myself to being like, yeah, I want to do tattoos. I was just like on drugs, I was like, yeah, I got a tattoo machine I've got from somebody, and uh, but I got that job, and it was a door open for me, and I pushed on him. I'm like, hey, I want to learn to tattoo. I want to learn to tattoo. And he didn't take me seriously at first because I was just some long haired hippie white boy coming in off the pot farms looking for a job. And he's like, I just need you to empty trash cans and do all this weak work in here. And I'm like, cool, dude, I'll do it. I need a job. And before you know it, like, it got really busy in there, and he was the only tattooer. And he's like, all right, dude, you want a tattoo? He's like, call one of your friends up. You're going to do a tattoo today. And I'm like, all right, awesome. I got like 100 friends who just want to get tattooed for free for sure. Call it my buddy. And he ended up having me do like a traditional tattoo, like traditional Sailor Jerry flash, just to test me out, just to see what's up. And I busted it out, and he looked at me and he was like, you want to do this for real? And I was like, yeah, man, like I want to learn this. And he's like, if I take you in as my apprentice, like, do you want to be a good tattooer? Like, do you really, this is a commitment. And that was the first time in my life, bro, that I committed to something. Like, truly was like, yeah, like, this is what I want to do. And then when times get hard, like, you don't get to quit. Like, that's
Yeah.
what a commitment is. Everything else in my life was like, when it got real hard, I was like, on to the next thing, right? Got too hard. Now I'm going to try something new. Well, I remember like I was still partying a lot at this point, right? I wasn't doing heroin, but I was getting drunk all the time. I was holding my job. I'd show up hungover every day, and I'm supposed to be drawing. I'm supposed to be doing all these things, to prepare myself for what I'm about to get into. And I remember coming into work one day, and I'm hungover, and I'm like sitting there at the table with my head down. And his name was Russell, bro, and he's a super good dude. Russell did 10 years in state prison as well. So he's a no BS kind of dude. And he looked at me and he's like, Mike, he's like, you look like a victim, bro. He's like, do you even want to be good at this, dog? Like, why do I got you in here? And I looked at him, bro, and some in my heart changed where I was like, damn, dude, like, I don't want to be looked at like that. I was like, I don't want to be looked at like a victim or like I'm just a loser. And from that point on, I started taking tattooing seriously. And I was like, you know what? This is most important right now. And so I dedicated myself to it. I was still messing around. I was still drinking. I was still doing the thing, but I kind of prioritized the opportunity that I had, and I took advantage of that. And I ended up getting pretty good at it, like pretty quickly, because he just threw me in with the wolves. He was like, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this. And pretty soon walk-ins were coming in, and he's like, you're doing these tattoos, and like you don't, Russell, if you've seen the dude, you don't say no, bro. You just handle business. You know what I mean? I didn't have time to be like, "Whoa." No, it was cool, man. Do your best. That's it. And it ended up working out in my favor, and I got pretty good because of that. He was hard on me. He threw me in with the wolves. He didn't tiptoe around. He was like, this is what you're gonna do, bro. If you're gonna commit, you're gonna learn the right way. And so from that point on, I did pretty well. Except I still lived a life full of sin and selfish behavior. I think about it now, and man, I wasted so many years, like trying to fulfill that void in my heart. And like today, I got that void is filled, bro, and his name is Jesus, and he's the only thing I want to obey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so more years after that, I ended up moving away from Tahoe. After a couple of years of that tattoo apprentice, moved down to Placerville, got an opportunity to work at a shop down here. And I stopped prioritizing drinking and stuff. I would still do it, right? It wasn't as often, it wasn't an everyday thing, but like when I go hard, I go hard, right? I'm like, if we're gonna party, like, yeah, I'm gonna stay up all night. We're gonna get a bag of blow, and I'm gonna drink 40 beers. You know what I mean? Like, and then I'm gonna be hungover for like 3 days afterwards. That's my style. And that's just the way it is. You call it a lack of self control, you call it whatever it is. I've done it enough times to prove to myself that that's just what I do, and that's just awareness and taking accountability for when I act that way, what happens. And so I was selling weed, selling mushrooms, selling other stuff. I got into this and that a little bit, side hustles, but I tattooed most of the time. Um, and then COVID hit. I remember COVID hit. Um, we had all six. There were six of us who worked at that tattoo shop, and we decided to move down the street and open our own spot. We had some issues with the owner at that shop, and we all were really close. And all six of us were like, "Well, let's bounce and open our own spot, bro." And so we did. Um, Found a spot to rent, put our heads together, and we did it. Um, And then shortly after, all of a sudden, COVID hits. It was like 3 weeks after we opened, COVID hits, and the world got weird, bro. It got super weird. Um, I I thought it was a joke. I didn't like take any of it seriously. I was walking around. I was like, with all the dumb things that I did in life, and I didn't die. If God wants me to die from this COVID thing, that's just my ticket, bro. Like that's just how I looked at it. I'm like, and people were like, well, what if your folks die? And I said, you know what? Like, yeah, I would be sad, bro. But I started believing in I guess everything was one, right? Like when your card gets pulled, your card gets pulled. God is the only one in control of that. And so I kind of looked at that COVID stuff as just like I didn't really care. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was made up. Obviously, people were getting sick and stuff, but I didn't live in this fear of it. I'm up in more of a little country area, so these people up here they're a little different than down in the cities for sure.
100%.
Much country folk tell country folk they're gonna put on a mask. They're gonna tell you got to get lost. But so COVID hit. I'm tattooing in the shop with plastic up in the windows. Somebody ended up telling on the shop. They heard me in there tattooing, and I tattooed the health inspector in our county. He was like our friend. And he's came to the shop. He's like, Mikey, dude, it's just my job, bro. But somebody told on you guys, and like, you can't be doing it, bro. It's just my job. I'm sorry. And I'm like, I get it, bro. I wasn't mad at him. I was mad at the world. I was like, I made a big old thing about somebody, minding their business, this and that. But so I quit. I quit for a while. Everybody else had already quit. They were like, we're gonna stay home for a while. I'm like, screw that. I'm a tattoo, bro. You know what I mean? I'm a gangster, bro. Like, we're gonna get down, you know. But I ended up stopping after that, and I started drinking heavily, bro. It was like I started drinking heavily again, and I started selling a lot of weed. So when COVID hit, weed sales went up through the roof. I had stopped all that for a little while, And then COVID hit, and then all of a sudden my phone was blowing up from people I hadn't talked to in a long time. Like, we need pounds, because everyone's at home sitting on their couch smoking weed, getting free government money, getting EDD cards. So everybody just wants to start buying weed. The whole country, bro. It just like it blew up, you know? And so I'm like, oh, all right. You know, I'm drinking all the time, driving around drinking all over Northern California. I'm just selling tons of weed, right? Just going to, I knew farms everywhere. So all I had to do was go to the farm. They'd give me whatever I needed, drive it to Sac, drive it to wherever. I'm driving and just drinking all day long, just drinking and drive. I don't know how I didn't get a DUI in all these years. It's insane, because I never like wasn't driving with the 18 pack of Modelo's on the passenger seat car, you know, or in the passenger seat in the car. And it was just madness, bro. It was just mad. Like, I thought that was normal, you know? Like, I was afraid of Jesus, who loved me and wanted good in my life, but I wasn't afraid to drive 100 pounds around drunk with drugs in the car. You know, like, that was nothing. That was easy. But then there's Jesus. But I don't want to talk about Jesus, because that's terrifying. You know,
Yep.
it's crazy. Um, Shortly after that, COVID kind of cooled down a little bit, but I had gotten really involved in the weed game again after that. I started stacking way more people hitting me up. I was moving a lot more pounds. Um, like I said, I wasn't El Chapo, bro. I'm not out here to glorify what I was doing in any way. So if anyone's listening, that this is not what I'm doing. I am just speaking from the reality of how I was living at that time. Um, it escalated very quickly, because I stopped smoking weed, right? I wasn't smoking weed anymore. I wasn't really doing any drugs. I was drinking a lot, but I wasn't. So I was validating this, right? I'm like, oh man, like, I'm not really doing drugs anymore. I'm just selling them. So it's okay, God. I would literally say that in my head, because he would talk to me and I wasn't clear enough to recognize that it was him who was speaking to me. But I would have this dialogue with myself trying to validate what I was doing all the time. I always had that conscience, right? Your conscience is a direct line to Jesus. He is telling you what's up at all times of the day, you know? Whether or not you
Mhm.
listen to that, or actually want to admit that you hear that voice, is up to you, but he's always there. He always was for me. Um, so it escalated. I ended up getting my baby mama pregnant, and we were going through like a really rough time at this point. It was really rough, because I was drinking a lot. I wasn't at home ever. I'm up on weed farms. I would disappear for like 2 weeks at a time. And then I'd come home and I'd be like, I was gone for 3 days. She's like, bro, you were gone for like 2 weeks, homie. And I'd be like, what? I was that drunk, you know, like that time when you're living that fast paced life, like it's a weird paradigm. It's crazy. And so she's pregnant. I tried to like do my best version of like starting to become better, but I was so trapped. I was so trapped in money, because I actually started making some decent money at this point. And so I thought that success meant that I was doing the right thing, right? My whole life I never really had success as far as like financially, or but then I started hitting on them packs, and I started getting fat stacks of cash, and it was the devil, and he was lying to me, right? He was, but he connived, and he deceived me into thinking, oh well, this is working. Like, if this wasn't working, that means God doesn't want me to. But now this is deceived, right? Because I was making all this money, felt like I was successful, felt like I was doing something. um I was also a serial cheater. I was addicted to women. I was addicted to attention from women. I was addicted to everything that you could be addicted to, but I chased that too. Um, Instagram really wasn't good for that for me. For any of you that have struggled with that, I don't say this in arrogance, but if you're not an ugly dude and you're not a creep, it was a game that I won all the time. You know, I always won in the game of attention with women. It was one of those things where I would get a dopamine hit, right? Got some attention from a girl. It was on to the next. So I did some really shady stuff, and I was cheating on her while she was pregnant. She found out. She ended up having a miscarriage, bro, and it was like really gnarly. And we were about to hop on a plane back from New York, and it was awful, bro. She like he had to go to the hospital. We missed the flight. It was she had to get an emergency DNC. It was terrible. It was such a bad experience. And I think about that, and like I think about the state that I was in. And I don't know if that was like a punishment for the way I was acting, the impurity that I was with that. Because at that time, it felt like it was. It felt like that was a punishment. It felt like God was like, I'm not giving you this child, you know? And so I had this like built up hurt from that. And after that had happened, it was quite a mess. I was still just all I wanted to do was sell weed because I'm trapped in the game and I couldn't stop because once you get momentum going, it's like all I cared about was phone calls. Oh, I gotta go. See you later. Gone for 2 days, come back. Um, we ended up mending it, me and my son's mother. We mended it after the miscarriage. And I come home one day shortly after, and she's like, I'm pregnant again. And I was like, all right, well, we're going for it. You know what I mean? And from that moment on, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this differently. Like, I'm going to be better. Like, I felt like I was finally getting awakened a little bit to starting to want to be better, but I wasn't there yet. Um, I did my best while she was pregnant to I didn't drink, I wasn't partying, I wasn't cheating on her, but I was just selling tons of weed, right? I was just hitting her with all this money and all these things and making our life easy financially. So it seemed like I was doing the right thing and she was all happy and this and that because she could do whatever she wanted to do and she didn't have to work. She was chilling, most of the time. Um, and then my son was born. Uh November 1st, 2021. And it changed my life, dude. Changed my life for sure. That was the point in time where I remember holding him, bro. Like, and for any of you parents, you already know, you already know once you hold that pure little, oh man, it was powerful. It was powerful. And I wanted to be the best that I could for that little boy, I did. I really wanted that in my heart, but I didn't know how, right? I didn't know how yet. I maybe I did know how, but I wasn't willing to go to Jesus, right? That was the last resort for me. I don't know why. I wanted to do it my way, right? My way because of the life that I was living. And so I would shun those thoughts to the back of my head and I would white knuckle it. I stopped doing drugs. I stopped drinking completely. And so for that first year of his life, I did okay. I just sold drugs, right? That's all I did. I took care of my wife. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take care of her. I'm gonna be a good dad. I'm gonna do this, but I'm making all this money and I'm still living in this lie, right? But this lie's okay because look how I'm living over here, right? So I'm like, God, it's good, right? I don't do drugs anymore. I'm just selling them. And if anyone's gonna make money, it might as well be me, right? I would just have these crazy conversations with myself about this, these validating experiences. And man, that weighed me down. Like thinking about it now, like how every single day I had to just kind of just reason with myself over and over again of like why this is okay when I knew it wasn't okay. You know, I remember having I had ended up during that time I got a property and I rented this spot from this kid and I took over his spot and I hired a guy to run the whole farm and we had tons of plants and I'm up there watching over everything and I'm looking at these weed plants and I was thinking about my son and I'm like, is this what you want to give your little boy? Like, really? Like, you want to teach him how to grow dope? Like, do you really think that is why I brought that little boy to this earth? And it started to eat at me, bro. I was like, crap, dude. Like, I wasn't saying that in nicer words, but you know, it started hitting me. Things started coming together, and I started to feel this purpose in myself of like, you got to figure this out, bro. Like, you gotta align yourself with what you're truly feeling for this little boy. It is not about you anymore. This is about him and his life. And so when he was almost one day I'm on a drive and I'm flipping through podcasts, right? And I come across I was like, what do I do? What do I do here? I typed in how to be a good dad, right? Podcast. And this random podcast came up and I forget what it was. I think it was like dad work or something, but it had this dude on it. His name is Kyle Carnahan. He runs this program called Superhuman Fathers. And I heard him on this podcast and he was talking about his sons and just being a dad. And he was talking about a situation where he caught his son in a lie. And I don't remember exactly how it went, but his response to his son in a lie, and you know, he said like, I caught my son in a lie and I asked and I just told him I loved him, bro. Like I just told him I loved him and I hugged him and I held him, you know? That just hit me so hard, bro. It was like ding 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 in my head, you know? Like flags waving in the air is like, this is it. Like this is what I want you to do. And so at the end of that podcast, I called up Kyle because he's like, this is my program, Superhuman Fathers. And I went on the internet and checked it out. I didn't even like really read it. I was just like, this is it. I know this is it. Just from that dude's voice and how he spoke, like the authenticity of how much he loved his child and his sons and the type of man he was. I was like, this is it. I called the number and the dude who was doing sales at that time, I did a little intake and talked to him. I'm like, I'm in, bro. I want a year, 5 grand. Here you go. Bam. Kyle hits me up and he sends me a little like FaceTime message on the phone. And he's like, welcome, brother. Like, I'm really glad you want to be a part of this. And that was the beginning of the last layer of like that onion coming off of me. I'm still not aligned though. I'm still selling like large quantities of weed, but I knew that I wanted to change myself for that little boy. So I entered this program. I had no idea what I was about to get into, right? Like I saw dudes that were like shredded on there. I was never fat or anything. Like I was always athletic. I had a little bit of a dad bod going because I was just drinking beers all day, but I wasn't like I still stayed pretty active. I worked out still, and he put me on this macro plan. I'm like, well, this is the one I signed up for. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about being shredded. And they're like, no, dude, just you're gonna do what we're saying. This is part of the program. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is it. Started hitting my macros, starting to hit these workouts, getting on Zoom calls, and really getting active in the brotherhood of what that program was. And it changed my life, dude. It changed my life to surround myself with these types of men. I had never been around this type of people. I was always around drug dealers. I was always around pot growers. I was always around snowboarders and dudes who wanted to do blow and you know what I mean? That crowd. And now all of a sudden I'm around like all kinds of men who are on this growth path. And I was like getting opened up and I was like, this is what I want, I was like, this is it. But I was still such a baby at it. Excuse me. And so after like 45 days, it didn't take me long. I got like shredded like super quick because I only had like 15 pounds of body fat to lose. And underneath, I was pretty athletic. So like I got shredded and all of a sudden, like I started feeling like confidence and feeling better about myself. But I started idolizing it. I started idolizing the image. I started idolizing the performance, right? It was a performance is what it was. I thought it was deeper. I wanted to get deeper, but I wasn't. I was still immature in my brain and my faith. I was claiming I was part of Superhuman Fathers, but I was still lying to my brothers in there. I was still lying about what I did for a living. You know, I said, oh, I would tell them on Zoom calls, oh yeah, I'm in the legal weed business. I wasn't in the legal weed business. I was just selling packs across the country and all over, you know, but that's how I validated it. And so stayed in that program for 6 months. It was really good for me. I started changing a lot of things, but like you said, I was just kind of idolizing performance. I was heavy into like watching Wes Watson and all those types of guys, and I started idolizing the discipline and this and that. Like, oh, I need to be this, I need to be that, and I mean, I did it on the outside, but the inside was still broken. I was still a liar. I was still manipulated. I was still not able to be honest with myself. And believe it or not, about 6 months after I started that, the weed game really fell off. So after the whole boom during the COVID, a year and a half later, everybody and their mom decided to grow pot again. And so the whole system caved in on itself because there was so much weed now. And so prices just tanked. I wasn't making hardly any money. It was hard to even sell weed at this point. And I was like, crap, what am I going to do? You know, like I tattooed for a living and like I can make a great living tattooing, but I started to fall in love with that fast money, you know, like I wanted 10 grand a week, you know what I mean? Like I wanted 5 grand days, you know, I didn't want, you know, 500 to 800 bucks a day. I wanted that fast money. And so it came to a point, bro, where um I had this thought in my head. I had this thought, bro. I was like, you know what? Like I can ask the homie if he's got cocaine plugs, right? Because I can make quick money with that and I'll only do it for a short period of time, you know? And lo and behold, bro, that mistake changed my life. So I decided, I hit him up, ended up working out. I ended up buying a kilo. I flipped that kilo. I broke it down into ounces and I sold it, bro. I made like 20,000 off of it. And I was like, oh, that was quick. Like, I'm just gonna do this a few more times, you know? And told my baby mama knew what was going on. She was just like, whatever, dude, like just be careful, you know? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, you know what I mean? Like, didn't think anything of it. Well, little did I know that I had been under investigation by the FBI and the DEA for like a whole year now. I had no idea. And I made that decision, sold a kilo, went and got another one, got rid of some ounces, and this kid called me on my burner phone. And I had a tap on my phone and I had a conversation that I shouldn't have been talking out loud of. And they got it all recorded. And so they knew not only was I selling weed, because they were investigating me for weed. And 3 days later, I used to go to the gym at 4 a.m., right? I got home at like 7 a.m. and I'm sitting on the couch. And my baby mama and my son were asleep in the bed. I'm in the living room. I just sat down, just got home from the gym. I'm kind of just drank my protein shake. I'm just kind of chilling. It's like cloudy out. All of a sudden, my dog jumps up and he alerts. And I'm like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, I look through the blinds and I see doof, 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 like dudes running by. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I was like, the sheriffs are here. They're raiding me. Little did I know, it wasn't the sheriff, bro. It was the DEA. And they raided my house, tore everything apart, found everything. Um, and I remember sitting on that couch. I was being very respectful to him. You know, I got a little baby here, and it was chaos, bro. When those guys come in and your little baby's asleep and he gets woken up by ARs and your baby mama's freaking out, like bro, it's chaos, dude. I wish that upon no one, bro. That feeling was just, oh, it was just torturous. And I'm sitting on the couch after they're ripping my house apart. next to my baby mama, and my little boy, he's just kind of running around the living room. I'm handcuffed on the couch that one of the U.S. Marshals is just standing there watching me, making sure I'm not doing anything. They knew I was being chill. I'm like, look, bro, I got my kid here. Like, I ain't doing nothing shady. And my little boy, he was only, how old was he? He was only 1.5. And he's running around, and I'm handcuffed on the couch. And he's running around. And he's like, dad, 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 and he play with me. And I was like, oh my God. Like, right then and there, it just hit me so hard. I'm like, what did you do, bro? What did you do? You ruined it, bro. Like, I just remember that desperate feeling. And they ended up, you know, taking me back in one of our bedrooms and trying to question me. And I just, I said, bro, this ain't what time it is. And he's pretty much was like, well, I'm beating a dead horse, aren't I? So he took me to jail, and they took our cars, they took everything, and I went to Sac County, and they booked me in on federal charges. Um, and I remember being in Sac County and just I had never been away from my little boy since he'd been born, and I was just thinking about it in there, and it was just torturing me, bro. It was just like I couldn't I couldn't believe it. I was like, dude, I was like, you really had to do this. Like God gave me the option. He gave me that why, right? But I was so clouded by that greed, man. That devil, he came in so hard at me, and I failed, bro. I let him deceive me, and I made that decision, and man, that one hurt. So I ended up doing 8 days in Sac County and then going to my hearing. Um, we owned my house. It was in my dad's name, luckily, because they were trying to take the house. Um, Luckily, my dad was in his name. So we put the house up. They got me bonded out. So they bonded me out after 8 days, and I got out, and it was crazy because I think 30 days before the raid, um, when I was selling that blow, I hadn't been doing drugs or drinking at all. But one night I decided to get into it. And I came home after drinking all night long. I went out to sell some of it, came home blown out of my mind, high as a kite at like 2 in the morning. And I woke up and I stayed up all night. And then I came to it the next day. And again, my little boy, he wanted to play with me. And I was so hungover, and I was just a pile from being high all night and just blown out. I couldn't even play with him because I was so just peeled back. And that was the decision right there. I was like, you know what? I'm never ever doing this again, God. I'm never gonna get drunk again. I'm never gonna do drugs again. And he said, all right, bro, this is where the opposition comes, right? He said, okay, bro. And then 30 days later, the feds came and kicked my door in, you know? And I had been sober. I was like, that's it.
Man.
And it just changed my life, bro. And I got out of county jail. I was broken, bro. I was broken because I knew I was going to prison. I knew I was going to prison, dog. And my baby mama, she she begged me, bro. She begged me. And he gave me an option here, bro. He gave me an option. And this is my truth, bro. And God has told me to speak my truth no matter the consequence. And this shit, it killed me. It killed me forever, The feds, they wanted me to talk, right? They wanted me to talk. And I was like, yeah, right, bro, never. And they're like, all right, well, you're going to get 14 years. And God was like, you're going to do that to that little boy? You're going to do that to that little boy who you love? I didn't care about me, bro. This was about that little boy. And this is hard, bro. My baby mama begged me. She's like, bro, like, You have a little boy who needs you in his life. 14 years, homie. Are you kidding me? Because of your choices to live in a life that hates you, an evil, wicked life that hates you. And so they gave me an option, bro. And what I had to do, I had to give up some people, bro. And you know what? I did it. And that's my truth, bro. And I did it for that little boy. I didn't do it for me. I did it for that little boy. And as hard as that I wanted to kill myself for this, right? I lived a certain type of way for a long time, bro. But Jesus spoke to me and he said, "No, bro." He said, "No, you ain't doing this. You ain't doing this, bro." And that's a whole story on its other self. It's twisted. It is. But you know what? I chose that little boy's life. I chose that little boy's life over an evil life that I chose. My reputation don't mean shit to me in that world. I don't care. I ain't afraid of none of that, bro. What I care about is that little boy's life. And I honored his life in that way. And anyone can say anything about that because those people will never understand that I love that little boy more than anything. And he needs his daddy and he needs a man who will be the example that he deserves. And I vowed to be that. I said, "Okay, God, I'm done with that life." He said, "You're done with this life, bro?" He said, "No, you're really gonna be done with this life, homie. Because this is your choice. I ain't giving you a way out anymore. It comes down to this choice right here. And anybody can say what they want, bro. Oh, he's a rat, he's this and that. That's fine, bro. Because I came to terms with this and it took me years. It took me years to come to terms with this, to understand what I really did. And what I did was choose that little boy's life. I chose what Jesus told me to do, you know? For years, bro, I was like, I'm a punk, this and that. None of that matters, bro. What matters is that I chose the truth and the way, bro. And it killed me, bro. It killed me to know what I did to that little boy, bro. I don't care about what happens to me. I fear nothing. I just want to make sure that that little boy is taken care of. And he is the
Amen.
example of a Christ following father. That is the best thing that I could ever do for that little boy's life, is show him a father that loves Jesus as our
Amen.
savior and what he did for us. I've never told anyone that on a live stream before, but I promised Jesus that I would tell the truth regardless of the consequences in my life. And that's my truth. And I own that because the truth is the way, man. So another year went by. I stayed sober on pretrial. I decided that I wanted to become a coach myself. I decided that what I had gone through in life, I felt like I had something to give to men. Kyle inspired me to do that, but I wasn't ready. I jumped into it. I started getting physical transformations with a few people. I was helping people, right? But I was tortured, bro. Pretrial is something that it's something that I wish on no one. That pressure is just, I don't know, it is terrible. I stayed sober, and that's about it. About 7 months into that, me and my baby mama, we tried to keep it together. We tried to work out, but we weren't meant to be together, bro. I realized once I found Jesus, she wasn't a Jesus follower, and that relationship got severed in a really like gnarly way, but it was supposed to happen. And so she ended up finding out that I cheated on her again because the pressure got to me on pretrial. It got to me. I started chasing women again. I started chasing chicks on Instagram, man. I had my shirt off. I had a six pack on Instagram. It was really easy for me to get attention. I ain't gonna lie. And I used it to my advantage because I lost everything else. I lost every other game, right? So I had to find something to give me dopamine to make me feel better about myself. And that was just getting attention from women. And it was just another just pointless, shallow, just wicked thing of the devil. And I ended up leaving the prison. It was a hard thing. They gave me 49 months. Um, and I ended up leaving the prison. And all I wanted to do when I got to prison was see my little boy. And my baby mama hacked into my iCloud account after I left, and she found a bunch of messages and a bunch of just awful stuff I was up to on the internet. And she ended up hitting me up. She was furious. She was so mad at me. She was going to do whatever she could to break my heart. And she hit me up in prison, and she's like, I'm not going to let you see Trip. My son's name is Trip. And she's like, I'm not going to let you see him while you're in prison. And that shit broke me. That completely annihilated me. I was just like, the lack of control that I had, it was crazy. It's just, I was like, I couldn't believe she was going to do that to him, for how much it would hurt that little boy to not see his dad. But to be honest, it's what it took for me to find Jesus and truly surrender my life to him. I ended up getting on a cell phone because she wouldn't answer the government phone, and I got hit her up on a cell phone, and I was so emotional. But Jesus was talking to me, and he was like, just kill her with kindness, bro. I wanted to freak out, but I hit her up, and I'm like, look, I understand it's hard for you out there by yourself now, and I just want you to know that I support whatever decision you have to make. And I don't really know if that came from purity for me, or if I was trying to manipulate her into like feeling bad and wanting to give him back to me or whatever. But whatever it was, I felt called to do that. Little and behold, she hit up the prison and told him I had a cell phone. And so SIS, the gang task force, came and picked me up out of the dorm, took me to the shoe over at the Max Yard. I was at a low, so where I was at wasn't. They took me over to the USP. That's where the shoe is, and that's real deal. Like that's where I met Jesus for the first time in actual full surrender. I mean, I went in there and I was terrified, bro. I ain't even gonna lie. I got in there and I could just hear it, and it was just like, I ain't that type of dude, bro. I am not that type of dude. I'm tough, but I'm not that, dog. And so they locked me in there, and I had no idea how I was gonna be in there. Right when I got into the tank in the shoe, the guy was like, there was a little orderly, a little Mexican dude, and he's like, you want a book? He's like, you're gonna need a book. And I'm like, Bible. They had one Bible left. That was probably one of the most important requests I've ever made in my life. And so they put me in that shoe. I wrote a whole book on this, actually. I got like a 45-page book on this experience. And I got broken, bro, in the desperation in that shoe. That whole prison was on lockdown at that point. So there was no 1 hour out. It was just 24 hours in that cell. And I was in there for 30 days. And I read that Bible from front to back, full the way through, and then the New Testament again. And I was tortured in that cell by the devil, by the thoughts. And the only thing that helped me was that Bible. The only time I felt okay was when I was reading the Word of God, and I was begging him. I was begging Jesus, like I on my knees, like broken. Like I had these thoughts in my head that my little boy was gonna die while I was in there, and I wouldn't get to go to a funeral, and my dad was gonna pass away. I was literally going mad in there. I was going crazy. And and for any of those guys that are like, I did 2 years in the shoe and it wasn't nothing, man, I feel bad for you, man, because that is the lowest level of life on this earth. And that was as close to hell as I feel like you can be on this earth. And I was tormented, but I was also separated from everything. Jesus finally had me where he needed me. He had to completely take me to somewhere where I had no access to any distraction but me and him. And that's what it took. It was the last straw where he would, because I would beg him, and I was like, Jesus, take this. Like, I don't know how to do this. Please take this. I would write journal entries every day in prison. And the day before I went to the shoe, I begged Jesus to help me. I said, Jesus, I said, please help me, bro. I want to surrender this, but I can't do this. I can't do this on my own. I don't know what to do. Can you please help me? And the next day they came and took me to the shoe. Careful what you pray for, bro. Like you
Yeah, it's an
said, you pray for
answered prayer.
patience. Yeah. I prayed that he would teach me to surrender, and he did it, and it was painful. It was so gnarly. And it wasn't it wasn't the actual form of being in that place. It was just the seclusion, and it was just the torment spiritually of what that place does, you know, of the types of dudes that are in there, and the screaming all night, and it's literally a madhouse, bro. It's literally
Mhm.
just a madhouse. You know, just people with mental disorders, psychotic breakdown. Just I wrote tons of stuff down of what was going on in there, and it changed me for sure. It completely broke me down, and I had to beg Jesus, and that's how he got to me. That's how he got to my heart. That's how he said, "This is how you surrender, bro. This is how you surrender, and it's gonna take everything you got." And he did it, man. He did it, and I had to give up everything in there, you know? I had to tell him, I said, okay, Lord, like, since I can't do this with my son, I trust you with him out there. I know you're going to take care of him. I know he's going to be okay. You know, I had my girl, I was like, I hadn't talked to my girl in like 3 months because we were on lockdown before that. A bunch of stuff happened. And I was like, she's going to leave me, bro. I was like, she's going to leave me. This was my new girl, by the way. Um, but I got word like a few days before I got out of the shoe. They give you one phone call a month in there. They haul this little phone, like a pay phone, down on a cord down the hallways. And they're like, you want the call? Most dudes in there ain't getting calls. Most of them dudes are lifers, you know what I mean? They ain't got nobody to call up in there. But they came to my window and they're like, you're getting a call tomorrow. You want it? I'm like, yeah. And I talked to God and I talked to Jesus and I prayed and I was like, Jesus, I was like, that woman, I don't deserve her, you know, like I don't deserve her, but I want to spend the rest of my life with her. This is the first woman I ever prayed with, actually. I skipped a lot of details in this because I could probably talk till next week. But so my girl was what she was the first woman I ever truly prayed with and got vulnerable with, right? And from that moment, I knew that she was the one. I knew God put her in my life for a reason, and I was blessed with her. And so I made this deal with God and in that shoe. And I was like, God, I'm gonna try to call Rachel tomorrow. And I'm like, if you don't want me to be with this woman, I'm gonna let it go. It's okay. You can have whatever you want, Lord. Anything that you think isn't suited for my life anymore, I surrender it all to you. My son, my dad, everything. You can have it. I just want to do what you need me to do. He broke me like that, bro. Like it was like I had the fear of God in me. I was like, I can't. I'm good, bro. That's it. And I got that phone and I called her. And I was like, God, if she answers, then I know you want me to be with her, and I'm going to give her everything for the rest of my life, and I'm going to commit myself to her. And I called her, and she answered, and she was just so worried because when you go to the shoe, they don't call your relatives and let them know that you're in the shoe. Like you're just gone off the face of the earth. You know what I mean? Like it's where the big boys go. And she had no idea. She's calling the prison. Where is he? Because I would call her every day from the payphone, and they wouldn't answer. They just say, yeah, he's here, but nothing, you know. And she's like, she's what I put her and my parents through while I was in there. Oh boy, it's a lot. So I got that phone call through to her, and she answered, and she was just so happy to hear from me, and like it released so much for us, and I got word from the CO that they were gonna let me out pretty soon, and I said I'll be all right, you know. Now that I talk to you, like I'm so much better, you know. I'm just sitting here with Jesus right now, like it's just me and him, and I don't expect you to even understand this right now. I don't even expect many people to understand that level of brokenness that he put through me, but it was so real. It was the realest thing that I'd ever been through. Every line of event that happened to lead me to that moment, it was nothing but God, you know, and I'm grateful for it, you know. I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for all the experiences that led me to that, because it's exactly what it took for my hard head to become soft and to be able to accept him and his love and for who he truly was. You know, I remember when I was in there praying to him and I'm holding that Bible and I'm just like, God, thank you for this double-edged sword right now, because that's literally what it was. That Bible was my weapon in there. And when that torturous thoughts would start swirling through my head, and I'm hearing this dude next to me in the cell having a psychotic breakdown, and I'm starting to lose it because I'm just like, dude, I can't. You ain't getting out, bro. You know, you ain't getting out. You don't get to knock on the door and say, okay, I had enough now. You know what I'm saying? It's no, it's a real deal. Dudes is doing life like that. And so I ended up getting out of the shoe, and I just kept going through just cycles, bro. Cycles in prison every day. After that, I really was open to Jesus, to his purpose in my life. And I said, okay, I follow you. I said, I follow your directives now. My life is truly yours, Jesus. And my heart changed. My heart changed from then on. That's when I really repented. That's when I really truly let Jesus transform my heart. That's when I had forgiveness. That's when I started to forgive my baby mama for taking my son from me. That's when everything started to change. My behavior, my thought process started to change. And that was only my first 7 months in prison, you know. I ended up doing 24 months. I got to do about half my sentence because of FSA and all these new federal things going on. But so for the next year and a half after that, every day was just tests of faith in Jesus. And he just built me up, and he just broke me down, build me up. And then I'd make mistakes. And then I started to understand nothing that I did was going to make him love me. It took me a long time to comprehend that. I came out of the shoe kind of high on this experience. And for a minute, I thought, like, okay, I have to do all these things now. I have to do all these things to be a good Christian, right? I had to earn it, right? Nope, that was completely not it. And so over time, with all these experiences and doing these things for Jesus, and just because he loves me and for what he did for me, it took me quite some time to understand grace and that gift that he gave me. You know, for all of you out there that are in that place of like not truly understanding what grace is or why, it's just because he loves us. It's because we're his creation. He loves us so much. His blood was shed so that every single mistake that you make, that I make, I'm talking the worst of the worst makes, you know? It was hard for me to understand, like, Jesus even loves child molesters, bro. And somebody told me that in prison. There was a guy who told me that, and it took me a long time to wrap my head around that. But it's true as much as I want to fight that sometimes, right? Because I have this programming in my mind. But Jesus loves everyone the same, and everyone can be forgiven. And I thought about all that, my whole life of just chaos and nonsense and just sin and he died for all of that, and I'm clean because of that, because I believe in that. I believe in what he did for me, and it created a new person. It created a new man in me. I don't think like a criminal anymore. I started walking around. I walk around with the Bible. You walk around with the Bible in prison, like, you kind of get some weird looks sometimes, you know? Like, I started to feel like a square, right? The first time in my life, I'm like, man, like, I'm kind of weird now, but I feel so good in my heart, bro. Like I want more of this. Like I don't even care anymore, you know? And that was just my personal experience of like how my brain kind of picked things up and understood. But then I met other dudes in there who were at the same place. And then I met dudes in there that were farther ahead of me in their journey and they could break things down to me. And I was so blessed in that marriage to actually have some people in there that were guided by the spirit. You know, I had some good dudes in there, and I ended up getting like a pretty good job in prison because I'm pretty handy. I work construction a lot. I can do a lot of things. Most of the inmates in there, the majority, like, bro, they ain't even never held a screwdriver in their life. You know what I mean? They weren't from my walk of life, and so I had a good job, and I got a job as a plumber and as maintenance. So I would just fix tons of stuff around the compound, and I got a lot of freedom because of that. And I actually got a lot of respect from the COs that I worked under for that. They would kind of leave me alone and let me do my thing because they noticed like who I was. Like I would be alone all the time. I was the only white boy in maintenance. It was all Mexican guys, and they all, you know, everybody stayed, you know, pretty much with who you're at. And I just kind of ran my program of just walking around with Jesus all day. And I started how I did anything is how, you know, like Wes Watson used to say, is how you do anything is how you do everything, you know? And I would have to go in these bathrooms, right? These bathrooms and do these gnarly plumbing jobs where I'm snaking out these like putrid pea drains, like nasty stuff, bro. I'm talking like gnarly. But I did it for Jesus, bro. Like I would come in there and my first instinct, I would be so mad at first because it was gross and dudes were disrespectful and they would clog stuff on purpose and I would be mad and I'd be grumbling in there and then God would be like, bro, stop, dude. This is a privilege. Like you're doing this for me, like, cause I love you. And then I was like, oh, you're right. I'm just gonna do it, you know? And like those little tiny things that like seemed like so silly and so dumb, they became my foundation for how I perceive pain, for how I perceive hindrance and turbulence and things. Every time something would happen where I considered it like a pain in my butt, I was like, wait a second, Jesus, what are you trying to teach me right now? Always my first instinct, I will fight it, right? I'm gonna lie to you. My first instinct would be like, F this, I'm mad. But within like seconds, God would be like, calm yourself because look at it the way that I'm trying to teach it to you. And I'd be like, all right, what are you trying to teach me? And as soon as I would calm down, this peace would come over me. And I became addicted to Jesus's peace. I did. Like his promises, man. As soon as I started wiling out and getting all anxietal or fearing or worry or whatever. And then I would just calm myself down and I would just pray. I would just pray hard and I would say, Jesus, where are you? I need you. I would just like walk away and go somewhere and hit my knees. You know what I mean? Like in the back corner where no one could see me. And I'll just get on my knees and I'd throw my hands up. And I'd be like, all right, Jesus, like this feeling, this tension in my heart, I know that that's not a fruit of the spirit. So I need you to come through and I need you to show me. Because if it's not love, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, and self control, like it's not you. And he's lying to me and he's trying to keep me oppressed. And I don't want to put up with that. I need you, Lord. And so just ended up doing 2 years like that. And over, over that span, I became a new creation. I truly am a new man now. And I've proven that since I got home, you know, since I got home into the free world, and then I've been blessed with getting my son back in my life. Like I'm 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 a new man and it feels amazing, bro. What Jesus has truly done for me. I I'm so grateful, bro. Like I'm so grateful for all those hard times and those battles that I went through because it molded me into faith in the truth. And there's nothing more real than Jesus, man.